Testing, testing. All right, everybody, welcome. It's 6 o'clock and we're going to get started right on time. So I am Lisa King. I'm the Executive Director for Summit Metro Parks, and I welcome you all here this evening as we're going to talk about our favorite project. I want to explain the QR code that you have up there. That will take you to the project website that is full of helpful background information and resources. So if you leave here tonight and you have a question that we weren't able to get to or you thought of after you left, please check the website. There's a lot of information there and chances are you'll find your answers. So if you will, please hold all your questions until the end. We will have a question and answer period afterwards. Now I'd like to welcome the City of Akron Mayor, Shamus Malik, followed by the City of Cuyahoga Falls Mayor, Don Walters, who will both have a few words to say. Welcome, Mayor.
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. So we are honored to be here this evening. This is amazing turnout. Thank you all for taking the time to come. This is a really exciting project. This is something that has been in the works for a long time. This is something that I think we are really excited about for a number of reasons. But I think the biggest reason is, freeing the falls will really help with our water quality and environmental impact, right? It will help improve the flow of the river for fish. It will help make sure that toxins are not trapped in the sediment, and it really will have an even greater impact on the river that we've been working to restore. I want to thank a couple people before we start. I want to thank Summit Metro Parks, Lisa, and the whole team for the amazing work on this project, but really across the board. I think many of you now. I'm biased because my wife Alice and I got married at the new Valley View Park, right? The kayak put in right there by the river. We had our ceremony there. And now it's our favorite place. We go and walk there. I think we went 5 times in the last week. But it's not just that space. It's spaces all across our community that this amazing team stewards, right? It's the partnership that we have with the City of Akron. And raise your hand if you're a City of Akron employee. There's a number of you in the audience. They don't want to identify themselves. But we have some amazing people at the city who work really hard on these efforts and are working hard on our sewer efforts. Elaine Marsh is there in the background, and we are so proud of Elaine's work that we named our North Side Sewer tunnel drilling machine after her. Not many people get that distinction. And I also want to shout out Heather Ollinger, our senior engineer. Heather, wave. She helped do the design of the dam removal project, and she's put in countless hours into this project. The last thing I want to do is I want to shout out the City of Cuyahoga Falls. Akron and Cuyahoga Falls are a true partnership. We have been working on that even before my time in office. Mayor Walters and his team do an amazing job each and every day. And whether we're talking about planning in the Merrimack Valley, whether we're talking about the Cuyahoga River, whether we're talking about economic development, we recognize that we're better and stronger together. And I'm not just saying that because I live like 2,000 feet away from the City of Cuyahoga Falls. So with that, we are going to go ahead and bring up Mayor Walters.
Well, thanks, Mayor. I'll say the same about Akron. It's amazing that we still have this barrier between our two cities and the water. So if I want to kayak into Akron, I'll be able to do that soon. But this is really monumental for a lot of reasons. So people don't realize that the Cuyahoga River is not that large. It's not that important. It is to us. but on a national level, it's not. But we are the poster child on what can happen when you really focus on the environment. So where we were 50-some years ago, burning up in the flats, to where we are now, and this final dam removal is going to just open all that up for the beauty, the nature, the recreation, the development, all the things that we know that brings. We're very blessed to get the funding to get this done. And I know it was a little shaky for a minute there, but it's all going to happen. We're very blessed. We can't wait for it to come down. No one in this room, I believe, is alive that has seen the original Cuyahoga Falls, which is buried either under the dam pool, or somewhere nearby. So our namesake, our city was named after the big falls. No one's ever seen it, but we're going to be able to. So it's really amazing that we've come this far. Thank you to everyone that played a part in this, and really it was all of you as well, because without your advocacy, it wouldn't happen. So thank you to Lisa, Shamus, everyone else that's been involved, and it's exciting. Let's tear this thing down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to welcome and introduce Bill Zawiski. He's Ohio EPA's Water Quality Group Supervisor. Woo!
Wait, what happened? Now it's blank. That means I'm done.
No, there's a blank between each second. There you go.
Wait, what the hell? I got it. So, what a long, strange trip it has been, right? Where we are today, would anyone who has been around this river a long time thought we would be here? I remember when I started at the agency many years ago, when we would talk about, hey, let's look at these dams, there were certain things we laughed about. And the Gorge Dam was one of them. That'll never happen when we see where we came from. And what we need to remember, as Mayor Walters said, the Cuyahoga was not necessarily in great shape. Well, even though it was the poster child, it wasn't even the river in worse shape in Northeast Ohio. We had a whole bunch that were way, way worse in water quality and impacts, because what we're talking about here is restoration, removing those impacts. The river did not start out this way. All the things that have been done to it that have impacted it are really our fault. When the Europeans came here, we started doing these things. So while folks may make fun of it, we got to the point where we had advanced. At some point, treating sewage was just a goal. Let's do that. Let's treat our industrial waste. And then in the late 1900s, so Ohio EPA is the world leader in biologic monitoring of streams. And we have been doing that since the 70s and have learned a whole bunch of things about how dams work, how rivers work. And the one thing we knew about dam pools is we stopped assessing them in the mid-'80s because we knew of the impacts. We had already found out the impacts, and where we do today, we'll look at a pool and we won't because we're looking for funding. Back then, that wasn't an option. It's like we need a representative section of a river to ask the questions, how you doing? And dam pools are not those representative sections. Fast forward into 2000, Ohio EPA wrote the first report on what we call the total maximum daily load way of restoring rivers. Big boring report if you have nothing better to do. But it recommended taking the dams out. Why? Because we weren't so bright. We said, danger, take the dam out. And we're like, okay, let's try that. It wasn't easy. And it is not something that any one person or group ever does alone. And I think this is testimony to just the immense partnership that it takes to get this work done. And that is a wonderful, amazing thing. And I'm only here because all the people that started it have retired, and I just refuse to. Because I promised a long time ago to US EPA I would see this one out. So I hope I can make it. Not everyone's always happy when we do these projects, right? There has been a learning curve. When we first started in Kent and Monroe Falls, it was not 100%, hey, that's a great idea. let's just say it might have been at some point 100%. Hey, that's not a good idea. And it took time. It took success. Those projects were both successful. We moved on to the falls and took out 2 dams. It builds on success. The canal diversion dam further downstream in the national park was removed. We now have fish coming up the river that were not able to do that since that structure was built. The potential for the sturgeon to migrate to historic spawning grounds at the base of the Great Falls exists. They stocked sturgeon. How cool is that from a water quality standpoint? So we don't always have to make fun of the river, but we do ultimately want the restoration of the falls. Now, the cool thing is, if you ever walk down the boardwalk, some of the Great Falls are there, right? And the pictures, we don't have very good construction drawings, so where did they actually build the top of the dam? Well, we can argue about that all night, but the important part of this is we are going to allow a river to once again be free-flowing and to gain its aquatic integrity, because that's what we're all about here, is restoring that integrity. So with that, I am going to get a blank screen and forget what I was going to say. But Ramsey, I remember. So what I am supposed to do now is introduce a video about the removal process. But take note, please, on the video there is talk of an observation platform being potentially left in place that maybe folks could have got a view of the gorge. Now remember, this was done by artisans who are not engineers nor attorneys. So if you can imagine saying, yeah, we're just going to cut a slice through this structure, it's going to be cool. And then the engineers like Heather take a look at that and go, oh, no. And then you're going to build a platform that's like 65 feet high, and the attorneys go, you're going to what? So, needless to say, for many reasons, that platform will no longer be a part of this, but just enjoy the artistic rendering while you watch the video.
The Cuyahoga River Gorge. Created by retreating glaciers at the end of the last ice age, it's peaceful and it's dramatic. In it sits Gorge Metro Park, an escape and a refuge from the day-to-day hustle and bustle and a treasured Summit County destination. Through it flows the iconic Cuyahoga River. Flowing southwest from its headwaters in Geauga County, the river encounters a large deposit of bedrock in Cuyahoga Falls, forcing it to make a sharp U-turn before finishing its journey to Lake Erie. With rocky outcrops, caves, and dramatic scenery, the area where the river turns towards the north has attracted visitors for more than 150 years. Coming from near and far, outdoor enthusiasts once flocked to the gorge to view the big falls of the Cuyahoga and to enjoy the amusement park rides, dance halls, picnicking, and more. And that tradition continues today at the 155-acre Gorge Metro Park. But over the years, the river has faced serious challenges. In 1911, the massive Gorge Dam was built to support electricity generation for streetcars and city lights. Its construction put the famous Big Falls underwater and forever altered the landscape of the gorge. In the 1950s, the Cuyahoga had become a virtual sewer. As the region industrialized, the river became extremely polluted. Like other rivers around the country, the Cuyahoga between Akron and Cleveland became a convenient dumping ground for raw sewage, industrial waste, toxins, and polluted runoff. Thanks to the Federal Clean Water Act and the entire Cuyahoga River community, the river has largely recovered from its polluted past. But the Gorge Dam remains. Today, the 58-foot-high, 425-foot-wide remnant of the past serves no useful purpose. In fact, the dam is the only thing standing in the way of a completely free-flowing Cuyahoga River from Kent to Lake Erie. Even though dams were built with good intentions, they cause a lot of problems for water quality. In addition to preventing fish from traveling freely, dams affect the dissolved oxygen, flow, and temperature of the river. They also reduce habitat, trap and concentrate sediments and toxins, and alter the food web of the dam pool. 5 other dams have already been removed on the Cuyahoga, resulting in nearly 10 miles of restored river. And what's good for the fish is also good for the people. These projects helped improve quality of life and drive economic development along the riverfronts in these communities over the past 10 years. That's why a large group of community partners have joined forces to free the falls at Gorge Metro Park. US EPA intends to fund the majority of the project through the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, and non-federal funds will also be required. A funding plan for sediment remediation, construction of the sediment disposal site, dam removal, and restoration of the dam pool is in progress. Meanwhile, the City of Akron's ongoing sewer system upgrade requires construction work in the same area. While both projects are being carefully planned and coordinated to minimize disruptions to the public, there will be park and trail closures over the next several years. Although the result will be worth it, taking down a dam this big isn't easy. So how will we do it? First, nearly 1 million cubic yards of sediment must be removed from behind the dam. The sediment has been collecting for 100 years and contains pollutants consistent with the area's industrial past. A mechanical dredge system consisting of a clamshell bucket, crane, and scow barge will troll the reservoir, slowly removing sediment scoop by scoop. This work will likely be completed over 2 construction seasons. Each full scow barge will then be unloaded at a staging area where it will be screened to remove any large debris. The still wet sediment will then be pumped through a temporary pipeline under the Front Street Bridge and then alongside High Bridge Trail. It will continue under the high-level bridge at North Main Street to the Chuckery area of Cascade Valley Metro Park, about 2 miles from the dam. The Chuckery area was historically a dumping site and will be utilized as the permanent disposal area for the contaminated sediment. To make room to store the sediment and concrete mixture, trees must be removed from a portion of the Chuckery area. The sediment is mixed with concrete in the pipeline to form a more solid material that can be contoured before it is fully stabilized. This is an innovative and safe approach that has been used at sites across the country. The disposal area is designed to ensure permanent stabilization of the sediment mounds, minimize impacts to buried utilities, and appropriately manage stormwater. After final grading is complete, the sediment mounds will be capped with soil and the area will be planted with a native mix of trees and vegetation, and contoured to look as natural as possible. Within about 10 years, the final conditions will result in a biodiverse habitat that will complement the natural beauty of Cascade Valley Metro Park. Next, the dam itself will be removed. The water level of the reservoir will slowly drop as the dam is dismantled. The dam will be deconstructed using a barge-mounted excavator. To lessen the impacts to the area and to reduce costs, it may be possible to remove only the center spillway and exposed piping of the dam. If left intact, the remaining sections of the dam could then serve as a cultural resource and potentially be repurposed as a river overlook for park visitors. The final step of this project will be to restore the river corridor to its natural state, with a rocky channel and vegetation that will promote a healthy river ecosystem. Restoring the original grandeur of the gorge is our region's path to a vibrant future for the health of the river, its watershed, and its people. That future will bring clean water, natural beauty, recreational opportunities, educational experiences, and economic development. This project has national significance and is supported by more than 50 agencies, businesses, and civic organizations, as well as the public. Dam removal is critical to restoring the Cuyahoga River and completing a recovery decades in the making. From our industrial roots flows a new future, one that carries Summit County forward while honoring our rich history. The result will be a healthy, free-flowing Cuyahoga River for all to enjoy.
Now I'd like to welcome and introduce Courtney Winter from the U.S. EPA. She's the project manager and will talk about the sediment remediation project.
Good evening, everyone. As Lisa had mentioned, my name is Courtney Winter. I am one of the project managers leading the Cuyahoga Gorge Dam Sediment Remediation Project. I'm with the United States Environmental Protection Agency's Great Lakes National Program Office, which is based out of Chicago, but myself and the team are looking forward to visiting Akron and the city of Cuyahoga Falls as this project moves into implementation. I do want to give a quick shout out because I'm here with several colleagues also from the Great Lakes National Program Office who are contributing and supporting the project as well. Carla Rosenfeld, Leighton Guyton, and Gerardo Cabriello. Oh, should have had that up. Sorry. Okay, the slides that I'll be covering tonight, I'll be going over details related to what program this project falls under at the United States Environmental Protection Agency, and then I'll discuss the project agreement that is making this project happen, and then I have the pleasure of introducing the construction contractor who's going to be responsible for the implementation of the sediment remediation project. All right, for those of you who have attended these meetings in the past and are familiar with this project, you have probably seen this title before, Cuyahoga River Area of Concern. The Area of Concern program, Cuyahoga River Area of Concern is one of 25 existing areas of concern that are throughout the Great Lakes Basin. The state of Ohio has several areas of concern as well, but is fortunate to be in a state that has one area of concern already delisted. That's the Ashtabula Area of Concern. So what is an area of concern? Areas of concern received this designation because they are areas that are highly degraded or polluted areas that require restoration or cleanup projects to address what we refer to as beneficial use impairments. And so beneficial use impairments within the AOC world or the area of concern world, there are up to 14 beneficial use impairments that can be that each area of concern can have that need to be addressed. Within the Cuyahoga River area of concern, there was 9 out of the 14. But thanks to efforts from the state and local partners, the federal partnering agencies, United States Environmental Protection Agency, 5 of those have been removed. And so the remaining 4 beneficial use impairments are listed up there. It's the degradation of fish and wildlife populations, the degradation of benthos, dredging restrictions, and loss of fish and wildlife habitat. Okay, a little bit more background on Cuyahoga River Area of Concern. As I had mentioned, Cuyahoga River Area of Concern, amongst the other, as well as the other areas of concern, received that designation in 1987 under the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement. And so I'm trying to tie this all together for it to make sense. So the Area of Concern program has these beneficial use impairments. There's potentially 14 beneficial use impairments that can be identified within an area of concern, but Cuyahoga River Area of Concern only has 4 remaining. In order to address those 4 remaining beneficial use impairments, the locals, the state, United States Environmental Protection Agency, other federal partners come together and they create these, what we refer to as management actions, but they're essentially projects that have been identified as critical efforts that need to take place in order to address these beneficial use impairments. And so once you have this list of management actions or projects, once you have these lists identified, the Area of Concern program will work to complete each of those projects. And as they complete each of those projects identified to address the beneficial use impairment, the beneficial use impairment can be removed. And ultimately, for Cuyahoga River Area of Concern, we want all 4 of those beneficial use impairments removed. And once they are, the area of concern can be delisted. And so that's the ultimate goal of any area of concern, is to not be an area of concern, to be delisted. And so, as I had mentioned before, a lot of those management actions or those projects that are identified to address the beneficial use impairments. They're typically restoration projects or cleanup projects. And although those do have benefits to enhance and protect fish and wildlife, they also have benefits to the local communities. And in this case, the dam removal is going to have benefits to Northeast Ohio. When we talk not only about the dam removal, but the sediment remediation project that needs to occur first, when both of those projects are complete, as we've heard from others, it's going to improve water quality, that's going to improve habitat for fish, other wildlife, their populations will increase, and then there'll be benefits to the public, the communities, whether it's fishing, birding, recreational opportunities. The point is that these projects, once implemented, are here to benefit the community. All right, so tying in the project. So I know there's a lot of talk tonight about the dam removal project, which is why we're here and what we're excited about ultimately occurring. But first, we need to do the sediment remediation project. And so both the Cuyahoga Gorge Dam sediment remediation project and the dam removal are management actions that were identified by local partners, the state, other agencies, US EPA, as critical to address these beneficial use impairments. And so this project will address the 3 beneficial use impairments listed there. I guess just noting that the sediment remediation piece needs to occur before the dam removal project can move forward. Okay, so why do we need to do the sediment remediation project? Anytime that we're going to be removing any type of material from anywhere and placing it somewhere else, that material needs to be characterized. We need to look at the soil type and if there are any contaminants within the soil. In 2009 and 2011, US EPA and the partners worked to complete sampling within the Gorge Dam pool. And so the dam pool is that area that is outlined in green. And through the results of that sampling effort, they determined that there's PCBs, PAHs, oil and grease, as well as heavy metals, mainly cadmium and lead, present within the sediment. I want to highlight that the levels of contaminants within the material are low-level contaminants, and so they still do have health implications and are toxic to fish and wildlife and therefore humans as well, and so they need to be handled and placed properly. But they're not hazardous material. So if it's hazardous material, it's a longer process. There's different programs. Could end up costing more and taking more time. So really great that we're not dealing with hazardous material. The dam pool itself, it goes up 1.5 miles upstream of the dam. And so this area, when I'm referring to the dam pool, is the area that's going to be dredged and where the sediment is going to be removed. The sediment thickness throughout this dam pool varies anywhere between 1 to 34 feet. So it's not the water depth, it's the actual amount of sediment within the area that needs to be removed. And so that ends up being a lot of sediment, up to or approximately 865,000 cubic yards. That much sediment comes with a price tag. The Great Lakes Legacy Act Remedial Action Project costs just greater than $130 million. And so this effort, this project is under a Great Lakes Legacy Act project. And so in order for it to be a Great Lakes Legacy Act project, it has to be within an area of concern. That's one of the pre-qualifications of it or criteria for it. And with that, every Great Lakes Legacy Act project has a project agreement. And this is with United States Environmental Protection Agency's Great Lakes National Program Office, as well as non-federal sponsors. And the funding from the federal portion of the project comes from the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, and then the partners listed there, the Ohio EPA, City of Akron, Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, and First Energy Ohio Edison Company are all non-federal sponsors to this project. They have signed the project agreement and are committed to either providing cash or technical support or in-kind contributions. So I just want to highlight here project partnerships and what this project is. What's great about the Great Lakes Legacy Act program is that it is a partnership program or non-regulatory. We're working with the partners to get these projects done. And I had already mentioned before the project agreement is between EPA and the non-federal sponsors, but there's several other project partners that are also listed there. And they have provided support, whether it be cash contributions, again, technical contributions for the project itself. And so definitely want to mention that there's support from the local partners to make sure that this project can move forward and can get done. And also with any area of concern, there's a lot of federal partnering agencies that we work closely with, and United States Army Corps of Engineers will be working to support the construction part of the project. I'm not going to spend too much time on project timeline because when I introduce the next speaker, he's going to spend more time going through the details, but did just want to provide a brief overview, a background of where we've been. I had mentioned before, so the Ohio EPA selected the dam removal as a project to address the beneficial use impairments within the area of concern. There was sampling completed in 2009 and 2011. Feasibility study related to the dam removal occurred in 2015, and then we had the design for the sediment remediation project wrapped up in 2023, and in 2025 we're starting construction of the sediment remediation project. That's expected to occur through 2027 is when we're expecting dredging to occur, and 2028 is when the restoration activities will take place. And throughout, so both for the Cuyahoga Gorge Dam Sediment Remediation Project. US EPA is leading that and providing the funding through the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative with support from the locals. And the US EPA will be funding the dam removal project under the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. City of Akron is the lead on that project, and you'll be hearing more about those efforts later tonight. Okay, so I know all of you are here because of the great messaging that Summit Metro Parks does for the project, but if you are interested in learning more about the Cuyahoga River Area of Concern, AOC, you can check out, there's other restoration projects and cleanup activities within the area of concern. The link at the top, if you want to take a screenshot of the QR code, you can take a look at those projects and efforts, and then the link below that is for the Gorge Dam Great Lakes Legacy Act project. We're hoping to update the website with project photos, hopefully bi-weekly, as well as other project updates. Okay, and now I have the pleasure to introduce, we have the Cuyahoga Gorge Dam Sediment Remediation Project was awarded to Sevenson Environmental Services this spring, and Charlie Stein will be providing an overview of more details related to the remediation project itself, going into those nitty-gritty details and providing background as well of Sevenson. And I did want to just note for this, this is all the project team from U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. At the bottom of it, it was not intentionally placed, but please take a look at the email address. It's GLRI-AOC-program@epa.gov. If you have any questions, inquiries, if you want to stay updated on the project, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to hear from you. Thank you.
All right, hello everyone. Name is Charlie Stein with Sevenson Environmental. I am the project manager for our team. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown about our company, and then I'll get into some of the work that you're all here for. So we are excited to be here with you tonight and to work with the partners on this important project. So with that, we'll get into it. All right, so a little bit about Sevenson. We are a more than 100-year-old company from Niagara Falls, New York. We are a family-owned business, owned and operated. It's the fourth generation now leading the company. Started as a building contractor in 1917. And one of our cool projects that we did that we like to point out in 1969 over there on the right stop the flow of the falls. It's about 10 minutes from our headquarters, so it was a geological study that actually the Army Corps of Engineers did. So there's another falls over to the right of that one where we directed the flow, and they studied the rocks there that were building up at the bottom. About 10 years after that, and again, pretty close to our headquarters, Sevenson performed work at the first Superfund site. That was the Love Canal, it was called. I'm sure some of you have heard of it. That created the Superfund program, which kind of sounds like its name. It was a big fund to clean up contaminated sites around the country. So we performed the work at the first one. It was an old chemical dumping site where they were dumping chemicals near homes and by a school, actually. So the contaminants were leaching into the ground and into the water. So we were called in to clean that up and cap the area eventually. So, and like I said, that formed the Superfund site. So another project we like to call out, and that kind of really got us into the environmental work, and since then we've been a national leader in environmental cleanup. So a little bit about us, a couple more facts here. We completed over 1,500 remediation projects, 151 Superfund sites. Our revenue is about 60% private, 40% public. This is a publicly funded project, but EPA, Army Corps, those kind of entities that we work for, along with private revenue. We got about 600 employees. That varies throughout the year as construction season in the summer, and a lot of them are union employees. We have a lot of union agreements around the country, so they're the ones operating the equipment, moving the dirt, shoveling, stuff like that. And did want to point out we are using union employees on this project, so employ local union workers, whether they're running the equipment or, like I said, on the ground as laborers. But we'll probably have 20 to 30, maybe even a little more local union help. So excited to get them involved in the project as well. A little bit about our services. It's kind of split there on the left and the right. Remedial construction's kind of like uplands work, dirt work, moving dirt, excavation, residential remediation, stuff like that. And then on the right-hand side is environmental dredging. Really the last 20 years or so, a lot of the contaminant cleanup has shifted to marine work. So that's a big part of our business now, but we really grew with the land work and then our transitioned into the marine dredging, which I'm sure, as all you know by now, this is a dredging project. So those are some of our services. Here's a map of our current and past projects. So like I said, we're out of Niagara Falls, New York. We have our headquarters and yard there with a full fabrication shop. Have a small office in Michigan, Baltimore, and then another storage yard in New Jersey. But most of our projects are in the Northeast, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, some of our bigger states. But we are all over the country. I actually just came off a project in Jacksonville, Florida. We started a big project in California. If anyone's been to San Francisco, Pier 39, where all the SEALs are, we're actually starting a project there. So we had to temporarily relocate the SEALs to protect them while we did some dredging work. So pretty cool project as well. Next couple slides, I'll go quickly through just personnel and equipment. We have safety professionals, professional engineers, QC quality control managers, and again, like the bulk of what I said, union and non-union personnel out in the field, more than half. Equipment, we own a ton of it. We have a lot of it. It's 3 to 4 hours away in Niagara Falls, so we're gonna bring in a lot of it to perform this work. If things change, and they will in the field, we have a ton of resources close by, so we'll be able to mobilize equipment and get it here quickly to adapt to any challenges that may arise. We also have the ability to custom make any equipment material that we need, and we are in the process of doing that for this complex project. All right, lastly on Sevenson is our safety program. This is the number one concern on all Sevenson projects is the health and safety of our employees and also the community and the environment. So we take our safety very seriously. You can see there down in the bottom right, the experience modification rate. It's the EMR, we call it. Kind of a numerical assessment of safety on for contractors. And anything below 1 is extraordinary. So we take that very seriously and, take pride in it. You can see it's trending back downwards, and we're actually working more hours now as well as a company as a whole. So that's a good sign, and we'll take that seriously on this project as well. Have certain health and safety plans that need to be formalized and submitted to the EPA, and they review it. So we take that and we review it with our field personnel and our management. So it's something we do on a daily basis. We have a morning safety meeting at 7 a.m. every morning. So again, something we take pride in, and we'll make sure this is a good, safe project as well. Okay, so now what everyone's here for, a little bit about the work. I'm going to run through kind of site prep, mobilization, and then into the dredging, processing, pumping, and restoration, and then at the end we'll touch on schedule. With anything in construction, we like to remain flexible and just say that things will change, and we'll do our best to keep everyone informed. I know it's an important project, so it's just construction has a way of changing daily, or if not hourly. So just like to state that going into it. I think probably most of you have seen this, but this is the overview of the project, which was in the video a little bit as well. Let's see if this works here. There we go. So here's the dredging, and the gorge dam is right here. So that's the 865,000 cubic yards. So we'll be dredging up there, and then it gets pumped, as you saw in the video, along the trail, and then down to the placement area here. Right before we process it with the Portland cement, again, as you saw in the video. So that's the overview, and we'll get into each separate area and process as we go here. Okay, so this is one of our staging areas up by the dredging. It's just off of Front Street at the former Ohio Edison property. So you can see we have an access road to get in. We already actually brought in some stone today, so this is ongoing. We'll set up our staging area here. I'll have a little trailer for some of our personnel. With sanitation facilities, generator for power. And then over here is the debris offloading area. Again, I'll get into this a little bit more, but we're expecting a bunch of debris as we dredge, and that gets separated out from the actual sediment. So it gets pushed over here, unloaded with an excavator, and then this is the debris staging area before it gets sent off site. We will have to access the other side of Front Street because the bridge only has about 12 foot of clearance, and our equipment would not fit under there. So we have to improve this area a little bit by building a little ramp down to the water. If anyone's been over there, it's a pretty steep drop down to the dam pool. So we'll improve that a little bit, make sure we can get our equipment down there, but there shouldn't be a whole lot of other activity over at this smaller parking area. We will put up a fence to secure the area, but some of the project partners who may need emergency access, we'll be able to provide that, whether it's First Energy or Summit Metro. We've been working with them to make sure they have access to that. Okay, and then it gets pumped down through High Bridge Trail down to our other staging area along Peck Road. This is obviously close to the tunnel project down there, so it'll be a busy area, but again, we'll have some trailers up here with some parking. The darker blue areas are just equipment and material staging. This light blue area is a little water tank, holding tank to help with dredging. As you dredge, you're gonna generate a little bit of water, so that's a little holding tank there to help us. And then there's a stone road we're gonna build to help get equipment and personnel in between the areas. I'm going to touch on this area a little later. This is where we're going to introduce the Portland cement to help stabilize the material. And all of that comes out of here, which is where the dredge material gets initially pumped to. If you can see this dotted line here, that is the dredge pipeline. So that comes down through the trail and then into this area where it gets staged until it gets processed with cement. Last thing to point out on this one, there is a either type 3 or category 3 wetland in this area, and that gets protected throughout the project, so we're staying off of that intentionally. Okay, quickly on equipment mob and setup. Like I said, we're going to have a lot of equipment, so this is just kind of some of the water marine setup. Each of those sections there are called barges, so those get placed in the water. You know, it might be a larger piece of our equipment, or it could be a crane that helps set them in there. If you see on this top right picture over here, they all get pinned together with these 3 to 4 foot steel pins, and then that, you know, creates this big barge platform that can hold equipment down here in the bottom left. There is a lot of mob and a lot of setup. We're probably anticipating 3 to 4 to 5 months. So like I said, there's a couple different areas and a lot of setup. So that's what we're expecting. So kind of a process flow diagram, and again, I'll get into each of these on their own in a couple slides here, but a dredge crew up here, we talked about how it flows down to the sediment processing area, and then this offshoot here is just the debris that we also talked about, where it gets separated and staged at the Front Street staging area. Okay, a little bit about the dredging. Just wanted to show some pre-dredge surveys and then what we're anticipating for post-dredge based on the design of the sediment removal. So some of you may be familiar with this, but there are some deeper areas closer to the dam, and as you work your way toward Front Street, they're about 12 to 25 feet, I think, in just water depth. And then as you get on the other side, the east side of Front Street Bridge, it gets very shallow. So just wanted to point that out. We will have to dredge downstream to upstream. Typically you like to dredge the other way, but our equipment drafts about 4 to 5 feet. So there's just no way to get up there without dredging first. So in that area, we're going to be working downstream to upstream. And here's how we're expecting it to look after the dredging, and as Courtney mentioned, taking out upwards of 30 feet of sediment in some areas. You can see it gets very deep down by the dam, obviously before it gets removed. You know, some areas 50 feet, and then kind of the same. It gets a little shallower, but still, you know, 5 to 20-ish feet throughout the entire area. Okay, so touching on the sequence a little bit, 865,000 cubic yards is a lot of material to remove. So we're gonna put 3 separate dredging platforms and pieces of equipment in the dam pool at one time. So we touched on the shallow dredging, so that'll be one of the areas that we're gonna target with one dredge, and then the other 2 dredges will be one on this side and one on this side of Front Street. So again, working together to get as much dredging done as possible, but kind of wanted to show a little bit of the sequence in our anticipated you know, cubic yards removal per year based on the crews. So you can see a lot of planning went into it, and it's pretty complex as you're working your way downstream to upstream. Okay, next couple slides here focus on the actual dredging. So I'm going to walk through it as we would do it. So this is the excavator. We're going to have 3 of these out there, as I mentioned. It may not look exactly like this, but it'll be similar. This orange bucket here is a clamshell bucket. So when it's ready to dredge, it literally goes down into the water. It'll hit the top of the sediment and it closes. I think real quick on the next slide, you can see it there. In that picture, that's it open. So then when it hits the sediment, it will close and grab a bucket of sediment. It'll be lifted, hoisted up from the water and put into this slurry tank here in the picture, and then also here on the drawing that we have. And that mixes up the sediment with these two augers that are inside the tank to make it homogenized, to make it easier to pump, because we have to pump it 2.5 miles down to the Peck Road site. So it gets mixed in that slurry tank, and then on the next slide here, you can kind of see a little better. So he's dredging here, hoists it into this slurry tank. It gets mixed, and then this pipeline behind it pumps it to the Peck Road site with pumps. And there's a couple pumps along Highbridge Trail as well. So it's a little different from that video you saw. In that video, it was pushed to the bulkhead and then pumped from there. We're just doing it right at each dredge platform to make it a little bit more easier. So this slurry system here has a screen on top, so it'll screen out the debris, and actually this is kind of what a little scow, we call it, will look like, where the debris will funnel off to, and then that'll get separated out because it can't get pumped to the disposal site. So just touching quickly on some of the dredging around Front Street, the Front Street Bridge, and some of the old abutments that are in the water. We're protecting those throughout the project, so have to dredge around them. It'll be very similar operations, but it'll be a little smaller. You can see this machine here is smaller than the other one, and then up in here, an even smaller piece if needed. So we'll carefully work around the bridge. There's offsets to protect it as well based on the design, but we should be able to get about probably 85 to 95% of all that sediment under the bridge with this smaller but still bigger piece of equipment. And then if needed, we actually built this for a different project. It's a custom, very small excavator that barely drafts anything. You can get under the bridges, and if needed, we can bring that in and finish off the job. But it's only about 15,000 cubic yards of the 800,000 plus. So, it's not a whole lot of volume, but again, it's an important piece of the project that, we're taking seriously. All right, so this is the slurry tank where the sediment gets loaded into and mixed to send to the disposal site. Just a bigger picture of it. It's the same as the one you saw previously, and then this is just the design of the pumping, the high solids pumping that will send it to Peck Road site. So those are just bigger images of them, but those will be on all the dredging platforms to be able to send it down to Peck Road. So we did touch on the debris quite a bit, but this is kind of a map or an arrow diagram of how it works. Again, it gets screened at the dredge. These are the scows where it's watertight and the debris will fall into. There's a push boat back here that'll push it to our offloading platform. You can see a longer excavator here will grab the debris loaded into these trucks, and then from there it gets sent to a staging pad that's contained and lined. So all the debris gets staged there. Once we get enough volume, we'll send it to a landfill, and we do this all over the country. So there's certain permits and certified truckers and certified landfills that you need all the documentation and paperwork for, and we'll be sure to do that before we start sending debris off site. And that's the only material that's leaving the site, so we're not expecting a ton of it, but probably 1,000 to 5,000 tons depending on what's in the dam pool. Okay, so here's just a rendering of the pipeline along Highbridge Trail, again down to the processing area. So we've been working with all the partners here to kind of finalize that design of where the pipeline will go. I wish it was just as easy as putting it right on the trail and we can get to work, but there's chuckery that we need to protect. First Energy needs access, and we have to avoid their power poles, their overhead wires. So there's a lot of factors, and then we have to get to our pumps that are on the trail to fuel them. We need to inspect the pipeline. All that goes into installing this pipeline. So we're expecting to start putting this in there in maybe mid-June, and it'll probably take a month, excuse me, just a month just to put the pipeline in and make sure it's secure and ready to go for dredging. All right, we're almost there. This is the sediment processing area. So walking through this, down here at the bottom is our storage areas. We call them storage pigs. Each one of them holds about 150 ton of Portland cement. So trucks will bring them to the site. They get offloaded in here, and that's what we'll be amending the sediment with. So that's the start. We talked about how this purple area is the dredge sediment storage basin. So very similar to dredging. Once there's enough material in there, a clamshell bucket will grab it out of the basin and load it into this yellow pug mill, it's called. Very standard industry-wide for amending dredge sediment. So it gets loaded into there, and I think on the next slide or two, we'll go into a little more detail on that. But once it's amended with the Portland, it will be conveyed to these storage bins where these wheel loaders with big buckets on them will grab the sediment, throw them or load them into this truck here, a couple trucks, and then haul it to the placement area. So that's kind of the process on how it gets out of the big storage container and then into the placement area with those mountains that you saw in the video. So here is a close-up of that pug mill that I was describing. This vertical silo, it's called, actually stores the Portland. So out of those storage pigs, it gets moved to here where it feeds out, gravity feeds out and mixes with the sediment right in here. So this is where the sediment will get dropped in, and then it gets mixed directly with the Portland. It's a pretty meticulous operation. Everything's automated, so we know exactly how much sediment's going through there, exactly how much Portland's being introduced, and it's all measured by weight. So right now we're targeting 10% Portland by weight. That will definitely change as we move along. Hopefully it'll go down. Less Portland is always better. For us anyway, it will definitely go up in some instances too. It depends on the material. As we fine tune our system, that'll definitely change, but it's based on previous studies, and we're gonna do a study of our own to dial in that dosage a little more, but to start, we're going with 10% Portland cement. Okay, a couple more here. We saw this drawing of how the landfills may look. Again, this is just a rendering. It'll look a little different, but again, a lot of planning and design goes into this to be able to shape it, make sure the drainage stays positive and flows, make sure erosion isn't an issue. So there's some erosion control matting, some stone, all that kind of stuff goes into this to make sure it's a good product in the end, which leads to restoration. So the entire placement cell will get hydroseeded. This is kind of what hydroseeding looks like. And then it'll start growing on top of that 1.5 foot vegetative cover. So dredge sediment is shaped, and then on top of that is 18 inches of native fill that's being brought in to cap the dredge sediment, and then that'll help facilitate the growth of the hydroseeding. We touched on the erosion control matting and some of the maintenance and monitoring that it goes in with that as well. Even after we demobilize and remove our equipment, it'll be monitored for growth, and if it needs to be touched up or anything, that's our responsibility as well. Okay, so the project schedule, again, I think I've said it a couple times, but this is subject to change based on construction and things that change in the field. But we are targeting to start dredging this fall in August or September of this year. There's a little pilot study that needs to be done to just make sure all the equipment and processes are working. So we're targeting that this year, and then that rendering I showed of 3 different dredge platforms and equipment is scheduled to begin in April of next year. So at that point, we'll be full scale, All three operations will be running, and dredging will go all through next year and all through 2027. So target right now is end of 2027. I say pending additional dredging here. That could be some sediment that, you know, flows in from upstream, or maybe a little bit more at the bottom that we weren't expecting. So there's always, maybe always a little bit more, so that may push into 2028. But current schedule is try to finish in December of 2027 with restoration, closeout, demobilization by the end of 2028. All right, I got two more here. Monitoring and quality control. There's a ton of monitoring that'll be going on at this project along with quality control. One of the biggest monitoring is of the dam itself. So we're not expecting anything to happen to the dam while we're working, but that is a lot of sediment that is being removed from behind it. So there's surveys, there's seepage monitoring, there's water monitoring, water elevation monitoring. All of that is being done by a subcontractor we're hiring who is very good at all that monitoring. So we're bringing them in to help us with that. And all that will be set up before we start dredging close to the dam. Another quality control device we like to mention is the GPS on our equipment. So if you can imagine, dredging or digging in or underwater is pretty difficult. You can't really see anything. So all of our dredge equipment is GPS enabled. So the operators have a little screen in their cab where they can look at while they're digging, and they know exactly where they are, exactly how deep they need to go, what the limits of the project are. So they see that in real time, and their screen updates every time they remove a little bit of sediment. It shows that it's gone. And then we have a surveyor who can survey the bottom, who gets it a little bit more accurate than the actual GPS. Another thing that we're monitoring, this little buoy here you can see is a turbidity monitor. So turbidity, suspended sediment in the water column, for anyone who doesn't know. We monitor for that, and we try and keep it as localized to the dredging as possible. So we will monitor that and put in any turbidity curtain or any controls needed, you know, as the monitoring goes on. Okay, this is the last slide. Project work hours right now during setup and mob, 5 days a week, 10 to 12-hour days. But as we start dredging, we'll go to 6 days a week, 12-hour days. Everything's more difficult on the water. It takes longer, so we want as much time as possible to complete the project. So those are going to be our work hours. Sundays, we put in there reserved for maintenance. It'll, you know, wouldn't be any impacts on Sundays, just, you know, oil changes, stuff like that for the equipment because it's running so many hours. So, and then public impact, honestly, we're not expecting a whole lot, obviously, besides some of the trails being closed. We monitor the air at the work areas, again, for the public safety and our own workers. This is a water truck here. It'll mainly be used down by Peck Road where we're moving a lot of dirt to make sure there's no dust. So you'll see those running around. Other environmental controls like erosion control, silt fence, all of that will be installed. All of it needs permits through local agencies, so all of that is tracked before we even start. Not expecting any night work right now, and there shouldn't be any odors that we're expecting. So one thing I do want to state that's not up there is, like I said, some of the trails are closed, so we please ask you to respect those closures. I know it's an impact now, but it'll be worth it down the line. We have a ton of equipment, a lot of our guys moving around, so we just hate for anything to happen to anyone in the community. So there'll be signs everywhere. If you can please respect those, and if you have any questions, there's information on the signs. I'll be here for the next 3 years, so you can get a hold of me. But no, we know this project means a lot to all of you that are here in the surrounding community. So if it's important to you, it's important to us, and we thank you for your time tonight.
I think the next one is me. All right, so I'm going to talk about park closures, so it's a slight bit less complicated. That was great information. I'm going to lighten it up just a little bit because I think we all need a 2-minute break of all the interesting information. Not to say park closures are not interesting. So on this slide here, we're going to talk about closures. So during the sediment removal project, we will be managing a couple of different park closures, which I'm going to explain. So why closures? You just heard all about it. It has all to do with safety. Our primary concern is Sevenson's primary concern, and that's safety of the folks that are working as well as the public. So we're going to be doing that with protection of the construction zone with construction fencing along the riverbanks. And the contractors, that keeps our folks that are looking at what's going on safe on the riverbank. They need to stay back. So one of the imperative things we must do, as Sevenson requested, and we intend to comply, is to do our level best to keep people from fishing in the dam pool and off the bank. So knowing that, we are going to be trying to keep park areas open wherever possible. So this slide shows the park area footprint as you've seen. Cascade Valley Metro Park, the Chuckery area, has been closed for quite a while and will remain closed for several years throughout the dam removal and restoration process. Other areas in Cascade Valley Metro Park will not be affected. So on the left is the Gorge Metro Park. This park will have several closures coming this summer, actually coming in 2 weeks for the first part, which we'll discuss in more detail in this next slide. So everybody can find the red. That's the trail portions that will be closed. Where you see the dashed dot lines, those are the trail portions that will be open. So the High Bridge Trail and parking lot will be the first thing that we're going to close on June 2nd. As the contractor begins working his way into the sediment removal and laying the pipeline. So as you already know, anybody that's been on the High Bridge Trail, it is right above the dam pool. So we will be totally closing that on both ends, just so you're aware. The next will begin July 14th. We're going to close the Glens Trail entirely, and the Lower Gorge Trail to the observation deck. This is in preparation for the contractor's start and dredging in the river. Let's see. So the red portion on the map shows the Gorge Trail portions that will be closed. You'll be able to hike the Upper Gorge Trail, that's to the top there. So that part goes to the west, which will be an out and back trail. So there will not be a loop once we get the sections we need to closed. It's really important that the public respect these closures, as we've already mentioned. Tell your friends. Safety of visitors is our top priority, and keeping away from the construction zones is the best way to maintain safety. Even if there doesn't appear to be construction or heavy equipment on any given day, there are sensitive monitoring equipment that's measuring, as Sevenson just explained. And we need to be careful not to disturb those along the shorelines. So that also adds to a main reason that we need to close portions. All right, now I'd like to introduce Heather Yerliger, City of Akron Project Update. Down arrow, advance.
Thanks, Lisa. So I presented on Saturday without a PowerPoint at the Cuyahoga Falls Amphitheater, and I was totally lost. So I'm grateful to have a PowerPoint tonight. I'm Heather Ollinger. I'm the City of Akron's project manager for Gorge Dam removal, and GPD Group prepared this presentation for me, so thank you to my design team at GPD and AECOM. So I'm going to be giving you an update on the City of Akron-led projects. So we've actually completed 2 construction projects, so I'll show you some pictures of those. And then I'll be talking a little bit at a high level about where we're at in design of the dam removal. So just to kind of preempt that conversation, We're at a 90% design stage right now. We're going to be slowing down a little bit because we want to be able to incorporate the data from the dredge operation. Charlie said that they're getting real-time data from the dredge, and we want to make sure that that data is being input into our plans, so we're giving our contractor the best actual picture of what they're going to be working on. So our work is planned for after the sediment dredging is complete. So we're looking at dam removal happening in 2028 and 2029. The dam removal will take 2 years. We can only lower the water level 1 foot per week, so that allows the banks to remain stable while the operation is happening. So that's why that process is so slow. We're not just taking dynamite and blowing up the dam, which would be pretty cool, but we're not allowed to do that. So. And then we're looking at a separate restoration project in 2030. So we want to plan for that project after we know what the river valley is going to look like, and we can target that restoration. It is 1.5 miles of dam pool, so that's quite significant, and we're not sure what we're going to see as far as areas that need stabilized or areas that need planted. So we want to see that condition before we design for it. Okay, so pretty picture time. This is the sediment placement area on Peck Road. So the city of Akron, we got a grant to prepare this placement area. This was funded through Ohio EPA Water Resource Restoration Sponsor Program. It's a long name. It cost about $500,000. And the scope of the project was we were creating ditches around the site. We wanted to make sure that that site is ready to receive the sediment when it comes later this year. And so those stormwater ditches allow for proper drainage of the site. We also had some pretty soft soil there that had to be removed, and we stabilized the ground there as well. And then at the other side of the site, at Front Street, we did a bank stabilization project of the former power plant site. So you may have seen this if you've driven on Front Street recently. We removed the failing sheet pile wall, and we graded back the site and added some stone to make that a safe laydown and staging area for the contractor to use. So this project was funded through US EPA Great Lakes Restoration Initiative and cost about $1 million and was just completed. Okay, now getting into some highlights of where we're at with the dam removal design. We've been working on this for a few years now, and it's changed a little bit over time, but as Bill said with our project video and the observation deck, we will not be doing that because we need to access the dam from the north side. So we're going to be starting demolition of the dam by water on barge. And once we get to a certain level, we have to switch to land access, which will be using the lower gorge trail for that land access and cutting down that north part of the dam as we go out onto the spillway. One of the big aspects of the dam removal project is how do we control the water? So we all know we've had very big storm events and the water level fluctuates a lot. We will be controlling the water by notching the dam in the spillway portion. So that's traditional dam removal methodology that's used. And then when we get large storm events, those will be spilling over the south side of the dam where the pipes and other concrete structures are. And the falls, so we know that the dam is built on the top level of the falls, and so we plan to remove the concrete structure of the dam all the way down to rock. And we plan to expose the falls and all 3 sections of falls. This is just talking a little bit about river restoration, and as I said, we're not sure what we're going to be left with, but we want to leave it looking like a natural condition. Obviously, the dam's been there for a long time, and we're not sure what it's going to take to demolish the dam down to bedrock, and so that may be a little bit of a iterative or a wait and see approach once we get down to that level, but we do want to leave it looking like a natural flowing falls. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you, Heather.
All right, well, we're going to do some question and answer, and it looks like we have plenty of time to do that. We've got Mike Johnson and Elaine Marsh that will have microphones on either side of the road, on either side of the auditorium. So if you have questions, go ahead and just put your hand up, and I would ask our experts to please come on up so you can answer at the microphone. All right, I'll try to go right, left, or center here.
All right, thank you for the presentation. I have a lot of questions, and I'll start with one. And
We're going to try to keep it to one, so pick your favorite, okay?
well, I figure I'll come back later. Sorry. So the question for Sevenson is, have you had experience with this particular technique of stabilizing the soil and placing it into these kinds of structures?
Yes, a lot of experience. We do dredging all over the country. Pug mill operations is something we've done forever. Like I stated, we've built a lot of landfills back in our day, so we have a lot of experience there. Pumping it 2.5 miles is a little newer, but the whole operation tied together is something we do all over the country.
So I saw some folks in the middle, and then there's one in the back. Did we lose
Hi
one?
there. I wanted to let you guys know, when you do the math, the amount of toxic sludge that's going to go downstream after they remove 80% of it, that's an enormous amount of toxic sludge. And if you do the math, that's about 1 foot deep sludge going 18 miles down the river. And I know it's not going to happen all the time, but when you do the math, we have an enormous amount of toxic sludge that's going to pollute downstream of the river, which right now is a fabulous fishing area. I've fished this for 20 years, and it is fabulous. The habitat, everything, ecosystem is incredible. And we're going to be releasing enormous amounts of toxic sludge downstream is going to kill thousands and hundreds of thousands of fish. And yes, I do. So my point is, according to the Clean Water Act of 1972, federal law prevents us dumping toxic materials in waterways. And the Southern Environmental Law Program can look into this, because we can't just dump toxic materials into...
Go ahead and ask us a question, please.
So my question is, what are you going to do about the 1972 Clean Water Act that prohibits dumping of toxic materials in waterways?
Well, so we'll start with, I don't agree with you that it's toxic. And if you look at this sediment, it is the accumulation of all the sediment in the Cuyahoga River. There is nothing different here aside from the fact that a wall stopped it from moving downstream. If you look at the data in the Cuyahoga River, you will find similar chemical composition throughout the river. So I completely disagree with you and the toxics, but the Army Corps of Engineers has looked at it and we will be monitoring it. So thank you.
I was just going to ask how it would affect my kayaking, but I'll switch to my other question. Is there any concern from EPA, especially with the new administration, about losing any federal aid that was already promised to us?
So I can't speak to that directly, but can just say that the federal budget process is a complicated one, and I'm not going to speculate, future decisions on future funding. But right now, the Great Lakes National Program Office supports this project, and that's why we're moving forward.
Hi. I have to push something. I just have a quick question. Are any of you planning on installing cameras and streaming the work so we can watch the dredging and the demolition of the dam?
When it comes to the dam deconstruction itself, yes, we definitely want to do that. We're going to do that. And it's going to be easiest to mount it and leave it to run. The sediment removal is going to be along a 1.5 mile stretch. It's going to be really difficult to try to catch that. However, social media and all that, we may be able to have moments where we can get some of it and stream some of it, but we don't intend to watch the sediment removal over the 3 years, unfortunately.
Thank you first. It was a great presentation. How does the cold winter, as the Ohio has cold winters, how does that affect the sludge, the draining, the dredging? Does it freeze at all or any impact there?
This one's all you.
Yeah.
That's a good question. So it does impact it a little bit introducing the Portland cement. So we do plan, and I should have mentioned this, is a good point. We do plan on taking slight breaks during the cold weathers. It's actually written right into our spec from the design engineer that I think if it's 40 and below and dropping, we're not allowed to process that sediment. So probably from Christmas to mid-March, we probably wouldn't be doing sediment processing. We could be doing other stuff at the site, but it's a good question, and yeah, it does impact it a little bit with the Portland cement.
Hi, thank you. This is from Metro Park. Will the parking lot on Front Street remain open to the, no? And is there any intent to reopen the entrance at Albemarle and 9th Street where the public was able to go down into the gorge? That will remain closed?
No, unfortunately, when people come in from those areas, we're not going to have, once all the trails are closed and Gorge Metro Park is closed, we don't want access in there because the safety. So while it's open, that hiking can be accessed from that area, but once we close Gorge Metro Park down totally, we won't want anybody entering.
Okay, so you said that the upper trail will be open. How do you get to it?
Well, the parking lot will be open and that upper trail will be open for a certain amount of time, but when Sevenson says it's time for us to close it all, we'll have to close it down.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of concern with downstream. As a Portage County neighbor, I was kind of thinking upstream a little bit. I guess I would like to ask Heather, so to speak. The whole mission here is to free the falls and to open, river access, stream access, et cetera. The city of Akron has a huge presence in Portage County with Lake Rockwell, that dam there, and that water reserve. What can we do to open that to recreational fishing, hand-powered vessels? And we're taking down dams. That's one there that's holding back a lot of water.
So when we look at dam removals and what dams we're saying, hey, this would be a great idea to remove. I do not disagree with you. It would be great to get the entire Cuyahoga River flowing again. However, human needs are also important. And when you're looking at the folks that get their water from the city of Akron, at this moment, unless they find a different water source, Lake Rockwell will remain the water source. So as much as I'd like to have it out, and I agree with you, we're protecting the public need, which is providing water to people. So in the future, this may be a conversation we have, but for the moment, it is not.
Hello, over here. Question about the dredging project. With the irregular flows of the Cuyahoga River, do you know what your operating range is on the flow of the river? As far as like CFS goes, like what's too high and what's too low? And also the equipment that does the dredging, is that updated real time through sonar, or is it simulated based on previous scans?
Yeah, so first question, we got big equipment with big spuds that'll hold the equipment in place, so we're not too concerned with any flows. We are putting a safety buoy around the opening of the dam, so any equipment or anything that might fail or something and head toward the dam, we'll have it blocked off with buoys, safety buoys that we're going to install. And then your other question is, it's all GPS that's actually in the equipment, so it's just based off the bucket positioning, but we will have a surveyor on site full time, so that is sonar, and we can update that daily, and that's how the final surveys are performed. So while the equipment is GPS, the final surveys are sonar.
Hi, I've watched as the sediment area has been prepared in my backyard. And sadly, you know, I've seen all the trees stripped away and the whole thing prepared, and that's fine and dandy. How long will the sediment that's mixed with the cement be safe before the toxins seep through the cement and go back into the soil and the earth? And how long will it take for the trees and things to recover from this area?
Go for your part. So to speak to your first point regarding the contaminants or the toxins, the material itself, the contaminants that are within it, there was a treatability study that was completed ahead during the design phase of the project that looked at whether or not, you know, stormwater runoff, groundwater flow, if any of that was, if any of the material was leaching through runoff or groundwater flow. And so what happens with the cement when it is mixed with the material, it's actually binding not only to the material but to the contaminants itself and holding that in place. And so through those leachate testings, they determined that it is safe. They're not expecting any migration or mobility of the contaminants once they're mixed with that cement. And then the trees and restoration piece.
Yeah, and that's going to be just when we've seen the other dam removals occur, when you think Monroe Falls, if you paid attention to Monroe Falls, once the sediment's exposed, if it was in May, by June and July, you start seeing it get a little green and you start seeing vegetation come in. So the vegetation is going to come in fairly quickly once we've finalized moving it. So as long as the land's being disturbed, you'll get sparse vegetation here and there. Once they're done, you're going to get vegetation, and the trees will come in slower because they're slower growing. And we're going to plant native stuff because I know Mike and the botanists are going to, no for the invasives. So even though invasives want to come in, this is all going to be a native forest that eventually comes in. That's Mr. Curtis and Mr. Johnson there. So yeah, give it time because these trees need to grow, they get their footing. We're not making cement. Think of this as an artificial soil. So the Portland's not added to make a solid cement material. It's added to bind up the soil, the water, and the matrix and make an earthen type material that things can grow in.
I apologize for kind of picking on Sevenson a lot with the questions about the dredging. I was just wondering why you guys chose to go with the mechanical dredging using the claw arm instead of doing like a hydraulic type dredge. I've heard a lot of civil engineering projects doing essentially that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it was looked at, and maybe Courtney can speak to this more, but it was looked at and ultimately designed as a mechanical removal to limit the amount of water that's being removed from the dam and pumped down to the placement area. So while we will generate some water, it's a lot less than hydraulic dredging would produce. So that's kind of the main reason why I think the EPA and ultimately Sevenson went with the mechanical approach.
I guess it's for the EPA gentleman. I've heard a lot of conversations over the last few years about how this will improve the water quality, the fishing, and the general state of the water below the dam. I was just curious how that's going to improve the water below the dam.
Well, when we're talking about dam removals, there's a few things that go on. One, the dam pool itself is not a river, it's not a lake. So ecologically, it is tremendously altered. And we're here because we have to remove the sediment, which is an impact of the dam itself. So ecologically, the dam pool is where we're going to see the biggest change. You won't have stratification of oxygen in the system. We're removing the sediment. Fish that live in our rivers do not like 40 feet of water on their head. They live in flowing bodies of water. So that's the pool itself. What you see in the downstream areas, and the big things you see are temperature changes. These dam pools slow up water, they pick up heat, and that heat will go over to dam pools. So some researchers have found that types of insects and fish below dam pools are slightly altered because of these temperature gradients. So you'll see subtle changes. The goal is that downstream flow patterns are not going to change. The same amount of flow that comes into the dam is the same amount of flow that's going to leave the dam. That pool just slows it down. So it's already full of water. Every little bit of water that comes in goes out. So the goal is not to see flow changes. In the pool, you'll see velocity increases, and that's one of the problems of dam pools. It really stalls that water. But you'll see this combination of things take place. Typically, temperature and dissolved oxygen issues are resolved immediately upon that river being free-flowing again. Aquatic insects and fish will take a little more time because aquatic insects come back a little quicker, we've seen, because the adults can fly in and access available habitat, where fish have to move upstream or downstream to take advantage of those. So they'll lag behind a little bit. And that'll be part of what we all watch and see how long it takes. But we've seen the recoveries occur at every other dam removal we have done in the river, and we know this process works.
At the Chuckery area is the signal tree. I haven't been able to see it since it's been closed. Is it still doing okay?
Tell them they cut it down already. You're going to stop make toothpicks out of it.
Ignore him. The signal tree is protected and will remain so. Sevenson is well aware of it. We have a protection zone around it. We have had Davy Resource assisting us with, basically taking care of it for us. So we're going to be keenly aware of it all the way through.
Will we have a update, say July of the following years, so we can see and hear about the sediment removal, and then eventually the dam removal, and then hopefully the EPA a fish count or something like that that tells us how it's going and how the trees are doing in the new dump area. I tend to look at the long-term range, but I'd like those updates rather than just in the Green Island. Thank you.
That's a great idea. We always like to have these when we have things to share, and those would be things to share, so I see no reason why we can't plan for something like that. Right, Courtney?
What about kayaking upstream of the dam pool and kayaking below the gorge dam. Will that be restricted?
No, we don't see any reason why it would be restricted. So we would anticipate that that section would be experienced kayakers, because the place that you can get in will take you through the falls that are in Cuyahoga Falls. There by the Sheraton, they would come down the way, make that big oxbow, and then you're heading toward the Gorge Dam Falls, or Gorge Falls. I don't have to say that anymore. So I would think that a kayaker would know what they're doing through that stretch because of the waterfalls. Do you want to go ahead, Lindsay?
Uh-oh.
Comes the boss.
Hurry, run.
I know. I'm just excited. I'm excited because this is what we work on. I'm Lindsay Smith. I'm the Chief of Marketing and Communications for Summit Metro Parks. And I just wanted to kind of touch on that and some other communications type things. While we're not going to have streaming, we are going to be taking our own footage of the project, and we plan to share this on our website, on our YouTube and social media channels so that people can have little glimpses of the progress. And when it comes to the documenting of the progress, if anyone in here has seen our Valley View restoration documentary, we are trying to work on something very similar for this process. So that's actually already started. We've been working with the videographer to capture this entire process because it is very historic and will be of significance in the future.
I live across the little Cuyahoga River from the final dumping site for the sediment, and I was pleased to see that your work schedule won't be 24/7, but will your generators be running 24/7?
So down there, we are getting a temporary power drop from First Energy. So it'll be hooked into the power that's existing there. So shouldn't have any generators for the trailer. I'm trying to think of what else. I don't think there's any other generators down there that would need to run 24/7. So I would say no.
On your slurry pipeline, what are your steps for monitoring and responding to any kind of a spill or leak out of that pipeline? And related to that, are you monitoring turbidity downstream of the dam, not just in the pool when you're dredging?
I'll answer the first one, or the second one first, sorry. Yes, we're monitoring turbidity downstream of the dam. I think we monitor upstream, we monitor at the work area, and then downstream of the dam. So yes, we are monitoring that. The other question on the pipeline is a good question. That's probably our top priority is that pipeline because it's so long and hard to get to. So we have a bunch of monitoring that we're going to be doing. Visual inspections, we're basically dedicating one person to watch that pipeline. All of our pumps, both on the dredge and our booster pumps on the trail, have a ton of sensors on them, specifically pressure sensors to see where there's a clog that may be occurring. So if we see that, that gets wirelessly to a control room in our trailers. So we'll have all that information in a control room that we'll see when pressures start to rise, and we can either send water or send air at pretty high velocities through the pipeline to try and unclog it. So those are a couple of our monitoring techniques. And then each pipeline section is about 500 feet long before it's either welded or bolted together. So if we did have a clog that we couldn't unplug somehow with water or air, we can go to it and pretty, narrow it down to where we think it is and only remove very small sections of the pipe to unclog it. So we do have a lot of monitoring. We'll have a dedicated staff monitoring that pipeline along the trail.
Okay, I've got excuse me, I've got a question for Sevenson. Is the sediment, there's about, what, over 800,000 cubic yards of sediment that needs to be removed. I was just kind of curious, is how many cubic yards does one of your clamshells hold?
It's a good question. About 5.5 yards, and the goal is to get a full bucket every time. That's how we increase production and limit. Uh-oh. All right, that's it. Gotta go.
5 minutes.
So that also limits turbidity when we take a full bucket. So 5.5, and the goal is to get a full bucket.
In the late 1800s, this was a real tourism hotspot, and I imagine you've been imagining what will be like. This will be like when it's all over. Can you give us a little picture of what you see in terms of kayaking, recreation, tourism when this is all done?
That's you. You're the park.
Well, of course, we're very excited about it. We look forward to, more kayaking opportunities. We think that the falls that are behind the dam are pretty significant and will, anywhere from class 2 to class 4 whitewater. We'll know more, obviously, when we get closer to that. So we're thinking that the paddling capability of people that travel quite a ways, they're going to come here. So of course, that means economic uplift for everything, our restaurants, our hotels, finding the national park, of course, finding us, and all the Akron and the surrounding areas, especially Cuyahoga Falls. That's my favorite place to walk up and down. I think that's going to raise everyone. Yeah.
But OSHA will probably not let them rebuild that swing bridge.
Oh, go ahead, Mayor. And then we're going to do 2 questions, and then we need to be done because they're going to lock us in if we don't.
Thank you. Just a comment and a question on the debris. So as far as the debris, the comment, since 1977, I've been missing a blue Schwinn bicycle. But in all seriousness, is anyone looking at that to see if there's artifacts? And I know it's a lot, but when we took down the 2 small dams, there was tons of cool glassware and mementos from the past. So does anyone look at the debris for anything valuable, like a bicycle?
You said blue, right?
Yeah, blue. Yeah, so with doing dredging all over the country, you can imagine what we've found. Cars, unfortunately bodies. So our operators are aware of what they're digging and are pretty good at noticing anything. Unfortunately, if it's a bike, they're probably just going to put it in there and move on. But if it's anything that looks significant, they usually inform someone in the office, and then we can let EPA or Ohio EPA know.
I want to speak to that too. Summit Metro Parks has a cultural resources team that has been on this project because of our cultural resources, our history out there that we share with Akron. This is something that I would think is going to be ongoing for the entire process. They're going to keep their eyes on it. We're going to work closely with Sevenson. If there's something they think we should look at, we're going to come out. So we feel really confident in that piece. One more. Where are we with the microphone?
I don't know, Elaine would be up.
As everyone knows, Donald Trump wants to slash the EPA, and he wants to stop all projects, as far as I know. Can he do that by asking Pete to pull the Corps of Army Engineers away from this project, and then you won't have be under the auspices of them? Will that stop the project?
Yeah, again, similar to the question before, I can't speculate, decisions down the road. But as of right now, no, we're moving forward with this project, and again, that's why we're here.
What percentage is being funded by the federal government?
It's about 65%, 64, 65.
All right, thank you, everyone. We appreciate you coming tonight.
That's it?